Alford and Billy Martin, and the Yankees want the bat. Look at Martin.
Well, what they're talking about, Frank, is that he's got too much pine tar, and you've got to have a certain amount of distance from the trademark of the bat and the pine tar.
And Nettles is leaving the field as if the game is over. He's just coming in.
I'm not sure. They might have a legitimate gripe. They might be going to call George Brett out.
Well, he's out.
Yes, sir.
Brett is out. Look at this. Brett is out. And
team is back.
He is out and having to be forcibly restrained from hitting plate umpire Tim McClellan.
Episode of Too Much Pod Tar, as we are now diving into our off-season talk, and I have a special guest with me today to start off our 30 teams and 30 pods, and this is going to be going from worst to first. So it's kind of depressing on this first couple pods with the worst teams in the league, and obviously some promise to look forward to, the promising future. And this, obviously, the first team to start off is the Detroit Tigers, who had the worst record in the majors this past season, 47-114. And so my guest today is Tom Greene from the Tom Greene podcast, and he also writes for us at the Scorecrow. And he's a big Detroit fan, and he watched most of the season this past season, so he knows what he's talking about here. And then you can find him on Twitter at his personal is at TomTV23, and his podcast Twitter is Tom Greene at Tom Greene Pod. So definitely check that out. And he has episodes. How many episodes do you have usually? Like a week?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Alex. And usually kind of depends on the week. Like right now we're during NFL season, so it could be 1 to 3 a week. Mostly I try to keep it at 1 per week, but it depends on what I'm covering. So look for 1 or 2 a week. I know I give a very vague answer there. Now that I look back at it, but at least 1 per week.
Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm. It's definitely good to, keep out the content and have your listeners have something to, look forward to.
Yes, definitely. That's one thing I have to offer for advice to people that are listening to the show, is that if you want to get into the sports business like I am, like Alex is, like our friends at Too Much Pod Tar, Soupy, Joey Ricotta, Johnny, you got to have consistency. Mm-hmm. That's one definite thing. If you want to get into businesses, you got to keep consistency going. Look at Cal Ripken Jr., 2,632 consecutive games. He was consistent through over 20 years of baseball. You got to kind of be like that in the sports business. You got to be consistent over time. People will notice, and then all of a sudden, you'll build a resume and get yourself into the sports business.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny. I was actually listening to the Rich Eisen show today on Fox Sports Radio, and there was one of the callers called in. He's a 19-year-old college student. He talked about how he had a podcast, and then he had I forget who he had on. He had somebody big on. He mentioned, and then after he mentioned that, he dropped the name there. He got Rich Eisen to come on the show. Rich Eisen immediately went into, I'll definitely come on sometime. Just make sure you leave your number, and I'll keep in touch with you, and I can come on the show sometime. So stuff like that, you can definitely make some good connections.
Yes, definitely. That's another thing that I emphasize a lot in my coverage, and what I do is networking. If you follow my Twitter, I can kind of get annoying with it sometimes, but I do a lot of networking, because once you get yourself out there in the business, people start to take notice. Look at all the people I've ran into. I went to the same high school as John Morosi. I've had Fox Sports 1 reporter Jenny Taft's on my profile picture for over 6 years. I know Kelly Kroll from the Chicago Cubs. I know Audra Martin that does reports at Fox Sports North. I know Dawn Mitchell from Fox 9 in Minneapolis. The list goes on. But the thing is, networking is huge in this business. And part of it is what you do, but also part of it is who you know. Those are two major things to get in the sports business.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so before we dive into the Tigers talk their off season and the future in the next season. Got to talk about these couple of the moves that were made today. So it's from the National League East. First, the Braves signed Cole Hamels to a 1-year, $18 million deal, which I think was a little bit of a high price, but it's still just 1 year, so not much. They're not really risking much there, but I definitely think it's a good move. It gives them a solid number 4 starter, and definitely improves their rotation. So, what are your thoughts on the signing?
Yeah, that's one thing about free agency is that it tends to almost be like an auction. The highest bidder gets the prize. And unfortunately for Chicago, for the Cubs, who have had pitching problems, especially in the bullpen, they lose one of their veteran starters in Cole Hamels, the Atlanta Braves, for $18 million in 1 year. Like you had said, it's a high price to pay for someone that's on the opposite, that's on the back half of his career. But in retrospect, the Cubs paid up for John Lackey. They also paid up for John Lester. So it's not just the Braves that have paid up. And this could really pay off as the Braves and Phillies, we're going to talk about in a little bit too, are really going for an Eastern Division title as well as perhaps a National League title to try to sink the ship that Dave Roberts has built in Los Angeles that the Nats drilled a hole in this playoffs with sinking the Dodgers ship in 5 and making a lot of questions, arising a lot of questions, I should say, about Dave Roberts. So I kind of turned that into more of a Dodgers conversation. But Cole Hamels is a risk, but it's a high risk, high reward yield. You're not going to lose a whole lot, but your reward will be big if it pays off.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of those Phillies, the move that they made was for Zack Wheeler. They gave him a 5-year, $118 million deal, and that gives them a really solid pitcher in their rotation. With their new manager Joe Girardi, they should definitely make a run. I think Joe Girardi is definitely a really solid manager for them, and with the Yankees, I really liked him on the Yankees, and with Wheeler, that gives him a solid starter there, and I think they're definitely make a run at that NL East, and even kind of make a run at the Nationals money there, and I think the Braves and Phillies, the way that they're going so far in this offseason, I could actually see the Nationals not even making the playoffs.
See, that's the thing about the Phillies is that once the Braves made their move in getting Cole Hamels, the Phillies decided to make a corresponding move and wheel and deal to get Zack Wheeler. Joe Girardi is a no-nonsense manager, the guy that Philly's going to love. And if Philly doesn't love this guy, then something's obviously wrong with their fan base. And we kind of think that already because Gabe Kapler was only given 2 years, and I really didn't think that Kapler should have been fired. But here we are. With the signing of Wheeler, it definitely gives the Phillies some more depth in their rotation, especially with Arrieta, Eflin, and Nola. Even though Eflin's more of a 4-5 starter, he can still be solid. So Wheeler gives them hope for a full rotation and challenge the Braves for that Eastern Division. As for the Nats, oh boy, enjoy this World Series because you just lost Strasburg, you just lost Rendon, and God knows what else you're about to lose. So it's the NL East is going to definitely be a battle this year.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, I think the Nationals are actually going to retain Strasburg. I think it will stay there. But they definitely not Rendon, though. Rendon's definitely going to be somewhere else. My prediction is actually Rendon to the Rangers. I think he'll go there.
I did read a story about that. That would bring a great addition to what is about to be a new addition for the Rangers in Globe Life Field. That could definitely fill the park a little more. Rendon's a definite number 4 hitter. So if Rendon can do what he's done in Washington, then he'll be just fine in Texas.
Yeah, for sure. They would definitely be much improved if they got him. Yeah, so that's the moves that happened today. We'll definitely have some more to talk about, as we move forward. And winter meetings coming up here. Just I think what does it start December 12th? Yeah, so that's just a few days away now. So we'll see what happens if there's any big. Probably going to be some more big signings over that, and we'll see where Cole and Strasburg go. But that'll be more to talk about over the next couple months. So, but for now, let's go into what the show is about. Diving into the Tigers off season or past season here. So obviously this season they finishing 47-114, the worst record in the majors. That was obviously not a good season, but they didn't expect to have a good season. They're in the rebuild as of now. So, but what would one positive thing you would take away from the season if you had to pick one?
Well, this reference might not make a lot of sense to the younger generation, including myself, but bear with me here. Back in 2004, when I was in 4th grade, I went to my family reunion, the McGee family reunion. We had a T-shirt. We, like every family reunion, has your themed T-shirts, and ours was American Gothic, and it said "I survived." I survived the McGee family reunion 2004. Well, I wish I could make a shirt like that and attain it to this last season for the Detroit Tigers. I survived the Detroit Tigers 2019 season, because that's pretty much what's been going on here. What we thought was going to be the second year of a rebuild, because you had starters like Matt Moore, Tyson Ross, Michael Fulmer, Daniel Norris, Matt Boyd. Formidable rotation. In fact, in my debut article with the Scorecrow, I had said you had a fairly formidable rotation. Every single one of them went down. Mm-hmm. And because of that, the bottom just completely fell out. From what turned into a potential 80-win team, only won 47 games. And the one positive I have to say about this team, though, is that they never quit. Mm-hmm. Ron Gardenhire's a manager that has had his tough times, especially in the tail end of his career in Minnesota to start his career in Detroit. But one thing you can always say about his team is that they run hard. They always attempt to take that extra base, and they never quit. And that's what this team did, despite only winning 47 games. They never quit.
Yeah, that's about all you can expect from any team, no matter what the record is. You got to just, play hard. Don't give up. Like some teams will, they know they're not going to do well and then just kind of fall flat on their face. But, you always need to have that part of not giving up. So.
Yes, definitely. And what I'll have to add is back in 2013 and 14, Astros fans will remember Bo Porter was their manager, and they didn't win a lot of games. But his mentality when the Astros took the field was that they were going to compete in every single game and try to win every single game they played. I saw that same mentality in Ron Gardenhire's Tigers. Now, again, both Bo Porter's Astros and Gardenhire's Tigers did not win many games, but they had a never-say-die attitude, and that attitude can continue throughout good seasons as well as bad. So that's what they got to take into this offseason, into next season, is never say die, and when the season starts, everybody's 0-0. That's what you got to think of.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of relate this to NFL, the team that's similar to that this season is the Miami Dolphins.
Yes.
We all know their record. They're not a good team, but they have that same mentality about trying to win every game. And obviously, to my disarray, they beat my Philadelphia Eagles this past week. They put up a tough fight and ended up winning. So.
Oh yeah, what happened in week 3? By the way, what happened in week 3?
Week 3?
Yes.
I don't even remember what week 3 was. That's so long ago.
Perhaps it might be a good thing because my Lions beat your Eagles in week 3.
Yeah. That was week 3. Yeah.
But anyway, having to add about the Dolphins, Craig, give a lot of credit to Brian Flores. Because the start of this season, just about everybody, including Dolphins fans, were thinking the Dolphins are going to tank. Well, guess what? The Dolphins are 3-9 right now, and Brian Flores is playing straight through the tank. And I had honestly predicted Miami to win 5 games this year, and that was only because I thought they would pull a couple of pretty good upsets and go 3-3 in the division. And right now, they're 2 wins away from maintaining that prediction.
Wow.
So it's again part of the never say die attitude. That's what Brian Flores has brought to the Dolphins, as well as Ron Gardenhire to the Tigers.
Yeah. And I know obviously this is a MLB pod, but we have to bring in some NFL talk now once in a while.
That's part of the Tom Greene podcast is that we're pretty much all sports centric. I know I haven't done a lot of NHL, but every so often I'll tap into that. But I tap into a lot of NFL, a lot of NBA, and a lot of MLB. So I can talk just about anything. And I'm glad to do that because you need that skill to become a big name in the sports market. Now, for some people that think you got to know everything, no, you don't have to know the Patriots' third string defensive back that doesn't get on the field. But you have to know what the position. But you should know what that position does.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, now since we talked a little bit about the positives of this past season for the Tigers, let's kind of look forward to their future and their prospects. Obviously, Casey Mize, their top prospect, who was drafted first overall by the Tigers out of Auburn in 2018. Now he is set to make his debut this next season. So what do you expect from him? And obviously he'd probably grow into a top line starter for them.
Yes, what I have to say about Mize is that I was a bit surprised that he did not see the field this season because of sadly how bad Detroit was. But he had dominated low A, Class A, and Double A ball. And when that happens, especially now that Avila has been loading up the pitching staff, if you see a couple injuries or if Mize just is that dominant in Double A and Triple A, he could very well see the field this year. And Casey Mize is pretty much the future of this team. Of course, there's a lot more than just one pitcher that goes into it, but right now the Tigers are so dependent on Casey Mize in the minor league system that if he goes, then this rebuild could be 2 or 3 years down the pipe again. So with Mize, it's give and take, I guess. With Mize, you got to he's got to do well this year, but he could very well see the field, and I hope he does. I think he should.
Yeah, I think he definitely will. He's obviously, as you said, he dominated the minor leagues, and if he has a good spring training, he may even start the season up there. So we'll see what happens, but at the very least, he'll start the season at AAA and then be able to get there by the middle of the season at least.
Yeah, and another thing that has to do with it is free agency, which I guess we'll tap into that a little later, but I don't foresee Detroit going after a bunch of big names because of where they stand right now in the league. So, but if they get a few big names, then Mize could be held back a year. So we'll see what happens. But Mize, if he continues to be on the path he is, he'll see the field by the second half of the season.
Yeah, for sure. And as you said, talk about free agent signings. That's the next question: is who do you see them signing, or do you think they're going to make some trades? Matt Boyd was mentioned in some trade talks last trade deadline. So do you see them maybe trading him or making some other moves?
Yeah, here's the thing about Matt Boyd. I was happy that they did not trade him last year, and one, because he had 3 years of control, which unless you're desperate, I don't think you need to trade a guy that has 3 years of control, because usually most trade deadline guys are rentals. And if you don't want to have 3 years in control and you just want a rental, then obviously Boyd's not the way to go. But this team needed a veteran voice in the dugout, and for now, Matt Boyd is that voice. If they get rid of him, I sure hope they get an ace. They get an ace somewhere, because the one, they need direction. That's the thing about teams that are in where Detroit is, that they need a sense of direction. Now, as for free agencies, I'll be honest, I really haven't targeted one specific guy, but I think what Detroit should do is try to find some guys that aren't really pursued right now that have a positive WAR.
Mm-hmm.
For example, even though they're pretty good so far in the catchers department, maybe grab Alex Avila back. He's got a 1.3 WAR. That could help the team. If you can field a team with a positive WAR all around, that's going to help your rebuild in a nutshell. Another guy that they could pursue, despite having a first baseman already in stock, is C.J. Cron. He can hit home runs. So can Miggy, and of course Miggy is on the other side of the hill. Let's look at second baseman. Brock Holt's got a 1.3 WAR. He's a free agent. He's had some championship caliber experience with the Red Sox. Third baseman Pablo Sandoval, championship experience with the San Francisco Giants, 1.0 WAR. Let's see, shortstops. Echeverria is one that's right now not being pursued. 0.7 WAR. Again, not the biggest WAR, but a positive WAR, because if you can have that positive on the field, I know I'm not really too stat heavy. I haven't been for a long time, but in this day and age, a lot of baseball's ins and outs are dependent on statistics. And so that's where I'm giving you all these stats from. Let's look at pitchers as well. Tanner Roark, there's a 2.0 WAR. Wade Miley, a 2.0 WAR. Rich Hill, he's on the other side of his career, but 0.9 could give you a sense of veteran leadership. But there's 5 or 6 names out there that you could pursue for a cheap price that have a positive WAR that could help your rebuild.
They have Jordan Zimmerman still in their rotation. What do you see him doing this season? Is actually the final year on his contract, I believe, right?
That was the one starter that I was missing, and it was probably a good thing that I did kind of forget about him, because unfortunately in Detroit you have April and May Jordan Zimmerman, which is like Washington Jordan Zimmerman, and then June through September Jordan Zimmerman, which acts like he's never seen the field before. So as far as Zimmerman goes, with this club, unfortunately, I don't see them competing for a Central Division title this year. It's pretty obvious. We probably saw that coming into this show, but they're not going to compete for a Central Division title. So what you want to see out of Jordan is that he gives you 5 to 8 wins in the first half of the year, because let's be honest, this team will probably not win 45 games come the All-Star break. So if he can get 5 to 8 wins out of his first half, then he could become a trading prospect, and you could get some relief pitching. You could get some infield help for Jordan Zimmerman. So if he can just play April and May Jordan Zimmerman through July, then get traded, then you'd at least get good worth to help your rebuild. Definitely
need to start seeing something from him to be able to at least trade him, even if you can't have a good season, which they probably won't. Then definitely need to see some positives.
Right, because like I said, you have April and May Jordan, it's great. June through December Jordan, or June through, not December, geez, we're in December, but June through October Zimmerman, oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, any other moves you see them potentially making this offseason, besides mention some of the starters that are on the market that they could potentially go after?
Let's see. Honestly, off the top of my head, I don't see much, because with the team that you have, you're not going to draw a lot of big free agent potential.
No.
because anybody that goes onto this team knows they're going to have to endure a rebuild. And this is in all sports, it's a win now type of mentality, especially when you're on the free agent market. You go to the good teams, you try to win with the good teams. You go to a bad team and you're stuck. And sadly, in the case of Miguel Cabrera, it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Tigers fans don't want to see him go, but if he were not to have been placed on a 10-year contract, he would probably be gone by now too, because Detroit is trying to get the worth of everybody so that they can rebuild and make a team that's formidable on the field. But unfortunately for Cabrera, he's stuck in the rebuild, and there's only two options to go, and that is continue the endurance of the rebuild or get traded and win now. And in Cabrera's case, he himself probably wants to say, his heart probably wants to stay in Detroit, but his head says, I want the hell out of here.
Yeah. And I don't really see him, I don't see the Tigers having really much on the trade market for him either, because, he's obviously on the downfall of his last run at his career. He's obviously not the same as he used to be. And, that Triple Crown winner, Cabrera. But I mean, he could give a team a solid veteran bat and leadership. So
yes, that's the thing. He still has 4 years in control, and two, if he were to actually get traded, he would only be a DH prospect. In fact, I really, really wish Detroit would have traded Victor Martinez to Cleveland a couple years ago in his last season, just to see Victor take his last at bats with the team that he started with, and to perhaps get some of Cleveland's worth, like Willie Castro, who we got in a trade for Victor Martinez, instead of trading Leonis Martin for him, which, and thank God he's okay, but Martin ended up having a bacterial infection that damn near killed him after we traded him, and so that didn't work out for Cleveland, unfortunately for them.
Yeah, so to talk about you talk about the 2020 season, what would your prediction be for the Tigers' floor and their ceiling? What do you like? What is their high point? What is their low point?
Well, this all depends as well on free agency and what we see throughout the rest of the offseason. But if opening day were today, their floor, I think they hit their floor last year with 47 wins. I think their floor for this year is 52, to be conservative, and their ceiling is 72. If they somehow keep a healthy rotation and get timely hits when they need to, they can win more ball games than people expect because of that never say die attitude. But reality tells me that they're going to be lucky not to lose 100 again this year, unless they land a splash free agent, which I highly doubt. So your floor is going to be 52 wins. Your ceiling is going to be 72.
Yeah, that's definitely a solid prediction. I could see. I probably see them going, somewhere in the middle of that, maybe 62 wins, somewhere around there.
62 and 100. Yes, and I was 2 years ago. I was relieved that Detroit did not lose 100 because everybody and their brother thought, oh, they're going to lose 100 games, and I'm like, they are not losing 100 games. Now they're not going to make the playoffs. For God knows when they'll make it, but they're not going to lose 100. Lo and behold, they only lost 96, so I got that one right. But once half the rotation went down, you knew that they were going to struggle not to lose 100, and they lost over 110. So this is in Detroit. This is rock bottom, and I'll quote some SpongeBob. This is not darkness. This is advanced darkness.
I always love some SpongeBob references.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. Go SpongeBob! And if you're a Tigers fan, you're like, oh, SpongeBob. Why?
Yep. So we touched on Casey Mize, who will definitely make his debut this upcoming season, at least by probably the second half at least. And who's some other players you're going to be watching out for as a Tigers fan this coming season?
Well, let's see. Talking about the major and minor league circuit, Ronnie Rodriguez is a guy that is a very interesting guy because he's made trips up and down the major and minor league circuit. If he can solidify himself on the major league team, which he started to do towards the end of last year, he could be a solid piece in this rebuild. Another player that you could see from the minor leagues is Matt Manning. He's 6'6", tall pitcher, good pitcher. Let's see. 2.6 walks per 9 innings, 133 innings pitched in the minors. So he's definitely got the experience, kind of like Mize. And if Mize can make it up in the leagues, then perhaps you could see Matt Manning as one of the only 2 guys now that people can bring up in September. Let's remember for next season, the September call-up list has been shortened to 28 now instead of 26. Another guy is Riley Greene. In fact, shout out to one of the great minor league reporters out there for The Athletic, Emily Walden. She's covered a lot of Riley Greene stuff. So consult Emily if you want to know a lot more about Riley Greene. But low minors, you sit around 300. Could be a corner outfielder. So Riley Greene's another guy to watch for. He's been shooting up the low minor leagues. So Matt Manning, Riley Greene, Ronnie Rodriguez, and another guy's Willie Castro, like I said, from the trade prospect we got from the Indians. If he can make it up to the league, that gives you another shortstop that you could platoon with Rodriguez, and if Jordy Mercer stays, you have another guy to platoon with. So Ronnie Rodriguez, Riley Greene, Matt Manning.
Yeah, some solid names there. And the Tigers, talking about when they open the season, they open their season on March 26th at the Indians, and then they have their home opener on the 30th against the Royals.
Back-to-back series against the Central Division. So we're going to start it up with Central Division play, which it's funny how in any league, it all depends upon your division play. I mean, a team, let's say you're the Green Bay Packers, which I loathe, or the Detroit Lions. You could finish 10-6, but if you go 0-6 in your division, you might very well have to settle for a wild card. For Detroit, you could win 70 ball games outside of your division. But if you don't win half the games in your division, then you're probably not going to be amongst the tops of it. So those 6 games, the 4 to 6 games, I don't have the schedule in front of me, but those games to open up the season could really give a telltale sign in the momentum where this team goes. But of course, we can't depend everything on the early season because look at the Seattle Mariners. They started 13-2. Where did they finish? Last place in the American League West. So that tells you how much you rely on the early season. But to start the year with division games really tells you that there's no playing in the MLB is no slouch. You got to be ready every night you can.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm looking at their schedule now. They actually have 12 straight against the division. They start with the Indians, and then 3 against the Indians, 3 against the Royals, and then 4 against the Indians, and then 3 more against the Royals. So that's that's a AL Central, a lot of AL Central games there to start the season.
If only this were 2007, I would tell you, oh my God, we're gonna start 10-2 or something like that. But in 2020, we're probably going to start 4-8 or 5-7 because the Indians, even though they're having some free agency mishaps, I mean, we'll see what they do with Lindor as well as Puig and the guys that they traded for. But the Indians are still going to be a good team. They're gonna win. They're gonna win 80 to 90 ball games this year, even if they don't re-sign Lindor. Royals stink. I mean, yes, they got Mike Matheny as their new manager, and Matheny has had playoff and World Series experience, but Matheny's got a rebuild on his hands. Yost basically left the cupboards bare, and it wasn't Ned Yost's fault. I mean, Yost did what he could, and it was one of those like Andy Reid and your Eagles. It was time for a new voice,
Yeah.
new voice in town. So that's the thing with Matheny. So the start this year is going to be tough, starting with the Central. But if they can just start the year 6-6, then that tells your team, hey, we can compete in this division to start out. Let's keep it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, just before we get into wrapping this up, anything else you wanted to add about the Tigers? Looking forward to the future.
I guess my message to Tigers fans would be patience.
Mm-hmm.
Patience is a virtue. If you want to see this team win a World Series, then you're going to have to wait 2 or 3 years, and it's going to be tough. A great comparison is going through school. At least as for me, when you were in middle school, early high school, you wanted the growing to be done. You wanted those days to be over with so you could move on with your life. Well, you got to go through it. You got to go through the growing pains to get to where you want. Same thing in career, same thing in rebuilds. You got to go through the pain to get what you want. So in Detroit, it's going to take 2 or 3 years. But if we can get through these years, we're going to see a good team on the field, I hope. And if we don't see a good team on the field by the time Avila's in his contract year, then we need to move on from El Avila and perhaps blow this up again.
Yeah, and throw in a Star Wars reference here. Patience you must have, my young Padawan. Even though I don't have a...
You're referring to the newest meme, the Baby Yoda meme. Memes that Baby Yoda must have. Baby Yoda meme I must. Patience I must have, my young Padawan.
Yes. And I'm looking forward to the new Star Wars movie coming out on December 20th, just a couple weeks away now. So definitely going to try.
The saga ends. We lost the supreme leader. Well, not we. I should say they lost the supreme leader in the last Star Wars, and we thought the supreme leader was immortal. Now we see the final battle: Kylo Ren versus Rey. And Rey, we didn't even know who Rey was until the reinception of Star Wars. So I'm not huge into Star Wars, but I'm like, yeah, I'm sure we see this in Marvel movies or Disney movies. It's funny how we're in a baseball podcast. I'm talking DC and Marvel stuff, but you have in these movies you have the stands, of course, which are you have to know every single thing that happened in every single movie, kind of comic book guys. I'm not one of those people. I'm one of those, hey, new Star Wars movie. All right, why won't I see it? So my analysis, I'll say, the dark side lost the Supreme Leader, and now they're down to Kylo Ren. In a way, the dark side is now about to be outnumbered because you have Finney, you have Rey, you have Han Solo, who's still around. You have Chewie, of course, and C-3PO, R2-D2. This is advantage Rey, and we all hope that, of course, the good side, Rey, wins. But we'll see what happens because just like we say in any March Madness game, that's why we play the game. We'll see if Kylo Ren can outduel Rey in the final battle. But it should be a good one. Get your popcorn ready. December 20th is going to be quite a movie event at your local theater. Star Wars: The Final Saga.
Yes, for sure. And obviously, it's as most movies, the good side usually wins. So
right,
but probably going to end it with the good side winning. But maybe they'll throw a little bit of a curveball in there and kill somebody off, like they did with Soul. They killed off Han Solo in the whichever movie, whichever one.
The last one, okay.
Yeah.
That tells you I'm more of a casual Star Wars guy than the stan that a lot of people are. I wasn't aware that Han Solo had left us. But
Yeah, Kylo Ren.
I'll go ahead and give my final prediction in how this saga ends. Is there's going to be a surprise, like you said. I actually think that Kylo Ren will defeat Rey, but Finn will defeat Kylo Ren,
Ooh.
and the good side will win through Finn, not Rey. Let's see if I'm right, and I'll probably get attacked by a lot of Star Wars junkies. But that's kind of how I see it. Is Rey, unfortunately, gets sacrificed. Not quite in that way, but Rey unfortunately loses to Kylo Ren, but Finn defeats Kylo Ren out of rage, and the good side wins.
I can see that. Yeah, that's interesting prediction, and we'll see what happens. But definitely, to catch the movie on December 20th. So definitely excited to see what happens, how it all goes down, and
definitely
for the saga to be over. I mean, I'm not looking for it to be over, but that all good things come to an end. So.
And we saw that in Avengers as well. That Iron Man snapped the finger of the glove. Thanos was killed. So was Iron Man. If you haven't seen the Endgame yet, sorry to ruin it, but Iron Man does leave us. But the good side won that saga. So in a way, I'm kind of predicting what happened in Endgame to happen in the final saga.
Yeah, so I guess that's enough of that of the Star Wars talk. We talked a lot about, but we also talked about a lot about your tires, and we talked at the beginning about a couple free agent signings: Cole Hamels to the Braves, Zack Wheeler to the Phillies, and to shake up the AL East a little bit. And moving forward, we're gonna continue with this 30 teams in 30 pods in series with the Orioles. That'll be next week. I'll have another guest on that, and as the off season moves, we're getting more moves to talk about as free agents come off the board, and obviously some trades will happen as well. See what the Indians do with Lindor, some other guys. So yeah, it'll be exciting, and I'm definitely excited to see what happens. And
yes, definitely. And what I'll add is that to be God honest with you, I still think that Baltimore was slightly worse than Detroit last year. Yes, Detroit had the worst record in all of baseball, but Baltimore had hardly any injuries on their team.
Yeah.
And they managed to end up losing to 2 or 3 less games than Detroit did. Detroit was on their depleted C team and somehow only got the worst record by a couple of games. So I honestly think that Baltimore is in a worse position right now than Detroit. So the Baltimore guys will hear that and say he's full of crap, but I see it to be the truth.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And I mean, Orioles, they're a few ways away from even their top prospect coming up, which they just drafted last year, in Adley Rutschman, so the catching prospect. So he's going to take at least a few years to come up. So he's their future, I believe.
Yeah. Baltimore's hope for next year is that Asher Wojciechowski pitches every start against the Boston Red Sox. If they can do that, then they might have somewhat of a chance.
Yeah, slightly. Yeah, so I guess that'll wrap it up on this pod. And thanks, Tom, for joining into the pod. And make sure to check out all his podcasts at Tom Greene Pod on Twitter. And you do have it on all podcasts, everywhere you can find podcasts.
Yes, the Tom Greene podcast is available through my Twitter at Tom Greene Pod, as well as at TomTV23. It is also available on Apple, Spotify, Google, Overcast, Anchor, wherever you get podcasts, and be connected with the Tom Greene Network. I mean, I tweet and haggle a lot of people, as you probably see, and I have a lot of fun. So come on the Tom Greene podcast at Tom Greene Pod. Alex has been on there before talking MLB playoffs, and now I've made an appearance on his podcast talking a little too much pod tar. Thankfully, I wasn't. I was called out in the middle of the show because I called out his Eagles. But similar to George Brett, I made my statement, and then they made a protest, and then they decided 2 weeks later that George Brett was right. So we'll continue the game as if the home run counted, and there you go. Too much pod tar.
Yeah, that was good. I like that. Yeah, so that'll wrap it up here, and be sure to follow my Twitter at Alex Kielar, and follow the Scorecrow at the Scorecrow. And as we keep updated on all these free agent signings coming out on articles, we have them come out as soon as the free agents sign. Today we had the articles on Hamels and Wheeler as that happened, and as more signings happen, more things happen in this offseason, we'll have more articles coming out, and then also make sure to follow the podcast Twitter at pod_tar. And just keep an eye out for more episodes as we get rolling with this offseason. And just a reminder, you can never have too much pod tar. It's been another great episode.